And welcome to Legislative Insight. I'm Margie O'Brien. We're talking about the Fair Shot Agenda. It's 4 legislative measures that aims at changing things for Rhode Islanders, maybe closing the gap that lawmakers say is only increasing between the wealthy and the middle class. And joining me today, Representative Greg Amore, Representative Katie Kazarian, and Representative Aaron Regunberg. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
So this measure got a lot of support. We saw the press conference a couple of weeks ago where you had many representatives joining you. So what's the big push behind it?
Well, I think that after the election, many of us came together and said, look, we know that for a long period of time, our policies in this country and the state have really been tilted toward the wealthy and toward corporations. And we wanted to shift gears and kind of take an economic look at the middle class and the working poor and see what we could do to help them out a little bit. Because one of the things that we hear in the aftermath of the election is that people feel as though their needs and concerns have been forgotten, especially those people that wake up every morning, go to work, do what they're supposed to do, play by the rules, and they can't get ahead. And so this was an attempt to try to target an economic program toward them so that they know, yeah, we're listening, and there are things government can do to make your life a little better, to make your standard of living a little better, to make your workplace a little better.
And I bet you heard this, especially, I mean, you had a campaign that you worked
definitely.
at all summer long.
Yeah.
You hear this from door to door?
Definitely. So I had a big campaign, been knocking on doors since May, and I'm talking to thousands of families across my city's Providence. And you hear the same narrative. And I think people were really hypersensitive to politics, to campaigns, because it was a really big election year. So these are things that came up at the door. You know, I work hard. I get up. I go to work every day. I send my child to a school. When it rains, they have to put buckets in the hallways. They don't have smart boards, and you know, the private schools all have these tools. So these were things you're hearing again and again from, again, the middle class, the working families in Rhode Island. And we wanted to do something collectively, put it out there, to show them that we are working on their behalf, that we do hear their concerns and we're taking it seriously.
So that's one of the legislative measures that will look at all of the schools, the public schools across the state, and make sure they're safe for our kids.
Right.
And, you know, we've heard stories. My son goes to a school where the ceiling tiles fall on kids' heads. There's a chance that there's too much mold in the building, which is a real serious health threat. So how do we make sure that this comes about? Is it hiring more people to actually do the examinations of schools?
Well, I think it's about prioritizing, saying that making sure that every family knows that they can send their kid to a school that is warm, that is safe, that is dry. That is going to be a priority for us, for all the reps who came out, over 25 folks in the House. We haven't been making those investments in our state, and as you said, we're seeing it in our schools. We're seeing it in the buckets when it rains. There's a few different ways to bite at that apple, and there's conversations on what makes the most sense and how to, but what we're saying now is this needs to be on the agenda. This needs to be elevated because it's really, really, really important.
Yeah, I tell people this story all the time. My dad graduated from East Providence High School in 1973, and he still lives in the city, and he says, it looks exactly the same. And that's not how it should be. So many things have changed in education, and we should be putting all we can into our schools, making sure they're always up to date, and preparing our students for their futures.
So it's road works for schools, and that's really what it is. I mean, everybody in the state agreed that our roads and bridges were in disrepair and dangerous. But people out in the general public, unlike Katie's dad, don't see the inside of schools. You know, their kids go there, they leave. Kids don't complain. They just don't.
Right.
So
well, they don't know better sometimes.
Yeah. Right. And so they think it's the norm. And I think even educators have become numb to the conditions because, you know, you have to do your job. And the job is to teach the child in front of you. And you can't be distracted by leaks and porous windows. But they exist. I mean, every district in the state has received a report on their facilities, and they're going through them now. And RIDE is going to issue another report in April that I believe will show in excess of $1.5 billion of repairs that are required in Rhode Island public schools.
This will be an easier pill to swallow, though, for most Rhode Islanders. They honestly, even if they don't have kids still in the schools, they realize what they left. So it might be a little bit easier to get the work done.
It should be. Yeah. It should be. And like Aaron said, it should be prioritized. This should not be something that we continually put off. And we did for a long time. I mean, this goes back to the Kazarian administration when the cities and towns were starved, right? So the municipal aid dried up. You combine that with the fact that we didn't have a school funding formula until 8 years ago, and that's how we got here. I mean, what we don't want people to think is that the municipalities have been neglecting their facilities. They've really had no choice because we did not fund education the right way for a long period of time. And then, on top of that, we had 8 years of drying up municipal funding.
So one of the other bills that I did want to talk about, because there's so much talk, both pro and con, is raising the minimum wage. You're pushing for $15 an hour?
Gradually.
Gradually.
Right.
Over how much time?
5 years.
So what we're saying is no one who works full-time should live in poverty. And let's set out our goal, and let's say by the year 2022, we're going to get to a living wage for every Rhode Islander. So increasing by $1 a year between now and then. The biggest thing when I talk to business owners, what they are always saying is we want some predictability. We want to know where that's going. So let's give it to them. Let's say here's this very gradual ramp up to getting to the point where every family is able to put food on their table, is able to invest back in their local economy. When we're increasing money in people's pockets, particularly working families that go by the minimum wage, we're saying that we are injecting more money right into our local economy.
And we have so many small businesses in Rhode Island that maybe there won't be the pushback if there's enough notice that it is this gradual increase.
Yeah, exactly. And I think what Aaron said is pretty key. The business community does ask for predictability. They want to know we can chart out where we're going to be in a year and know what the state is going to be expecting of us. And I think since we started, we were first elected in 2012, we've always increased the minimum wage, and sometimes it's 60 cents or a little bit under $1, but we never really know why we're increasing by certain amounts, and neither does the business community. So what we want to do is make it predictable, let them know what's coming, and also make it so that we can show it to our members and say, look, this is what we're trying to do. This is the goal we're heading towards. Let's do it in incremental steps, and this way everybody's on the same page.
And not for nothing, right now the system is designed to benefit big corporations, right? Yeah. Walmart, McDonald's, they have employee handbooks that they give to their workers to say, this is how you apply for food stamps, this is how you apply for subsidies, because we're not going to pay you what you need in order to serve just basic survival. Right. That's not right. That means that all of us are subsidizing the profits of these giant corporations, these CEOs who are making millions and millions of dollars. That doesn't make sense. It's not good for our communities. What we're saying is those folks who can afford to be giving their CEOs these ridiculous bonuses, the folks for whom the wealth has been accruing for decades now, they should be paying those employees that they're giving that handbook to a living wage themselves. And,
I'm not great in math, but I was just doing a little bit rough draft here. Even if we get to the $15 mark, before taxes, it's just over $30,000 a year. We're not talking about a lot of money. And if you think of paying your rent, trying to put groceries on your table, that money will go quickly. So even that, it's not like we're asking for the world for a $15 an hour salary.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the interesting thing is, back when Rhode Island was a manufacturing hub and base manufacturing, so in East Providence, for instance, there were 6 jewelry factories. No one thought twice about paying a jewelry line worker a good wage. And that worker could buy a house and send their child to college. But we, for whatever reason, don't think the same thing about service industry workers. And since the economy has shifted, this is what we should be looking at to get us back to the position where we were in the 1960s and 70s, where you had unskilled laborers who were making a living, working hard, and able to contribute in the economy. It's twofold. If you have more in your pocket, you're going to spend more, right? That demand drives business. I mean, we can talk about tax cuts all we want, but if there's demand, then business does well. And as Aaron pointed out, we can pull people off some of the social safety net programs that they have to be on because they're not being paid enough.
So you were all at the State of the State when Governor Raimondo said she wanted to maybe change things up a little bit by investing back in manufacturing to bring those jobs back to Rhode Island. And then the overall theme of her address was that Rhode Islanders deserved a shot. And I thought it was kind of interesting that it was sort of tied in with your press conference that day of Rhode Islanders need a shot to get going. Are we in any way different from other states? Is there more of a difference as far as the climb that Rhode Islanders need to get out of than, say, someone in Connecticut, Massachusetts?
I don't think that the challenges that we've been describing, that we've been hearing from our constituents, are unique to Rhode Island. We've been seeing wealth inequality growing all across our country, and we've been seeing across the states, people aren't stupid. They understand that they're working harder for less now, while folks at the top are, gathering all the benefits of that work. So I think across state lines, people want to see more. There are a number of issues where we have fallen behind on these things. We've got a lower minimum wage than our neighbors, Massachusetts and Connecticut. We don't have paid sick days yet, while Massachusetts, Connecticut, Vermont, New York all have passed those things. So I think there's some extra work we got to do in order to say that we are going to be giving every Rhode Islander a fair shot in ways that some other states have already said we're going to give our people a fair shot.
Definitely. And yeah, this whole mantra did come across during the campaign season, where you were knocking on doors. And again, you're hearing people say, I play by the rules, I go to work every day, and I still just don't have a chance, and my kids are not getting the best kind of education there is, and I can't seem to make ends meet. So I don't think it is unique to Rhode Island. I agree with Representative Regunberg. It's interesting when you have a national election going on at the same time you have our local elections, because you do see how these narratives are actually playing out throughout the entire country. But yeah, it's.
I think Rhode Island's unique, and I think most of the reports that analyze Rhode Island's economy point to advanced manufacturing starting to grow, and that's what the governor's talking about, advanced manufacturing.
Right.
We have not adapted very well to the globalization and mechanization, and so because we were heavy in non-advanced manufacturing, it's taken us a little more time to come back out of that. So I think that's where we're unique, is that we had a lot of our eggs in the base manufacturing. We don't have much of that anymore. The governor's proposal, as we have done, the House has supported job training for advanced manufacturing, which is the future. But
Sure.
but there are these other base jobs, service industry jobs that need to be compensated at a living wage.
Yeah, I want to say one thing on manufacturing, because we have this nostalgia about manufacturing blue-collar jobs as being these living wage jobs. That didn't used to always be the case, right? We remember child labor, all the pictures of back in the day. Those were terrible, dangerous, awful, working for pennies jobs. Mm-hmm. What happened was a combination of those workers organizing and saying we demand to be paid a living wage, and government following up and having policies and regulations and safety statutes and things like that to say we're going to make sure these jobs are good. Then because of free trade and globalization, a number of reasons, those jobs have been leaving. What we have, as Greg said, is service sector jobs by and large. So it's our job now in government to do the same thing that we did 60 years ago and say we're going to make sure that those jobs can be good living wage, fair shot jobs as well.
And one thing that you touched on was the earned sick days, the paid sick days. I bet this would be music to the ears, especially of single parents who probably pump their kid full of Motrin and send them to school just so they don't miss a day of work and a day of pay. How can we make sure this is a reality in Rhode Island?
Right. So right now, 40% of private sector workers in our state can't earn any sick days. So you got people making that heartbreaking choice between their own health and going to work, between their kids' health and going to work. And for a lot of people, that one day missed pay, that could be groceries for the week, right? That's from our perspective, I think, not a morally acceptable choice. To say nothing of, it's not a good choice for public health. It's not a good choice for families. We think it's time to do what so many of the states in our region and across the country have done and say every Rhode Islander should be able to take a day off to care for themselves or to care for their kids.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, everybody gets sick, right? So if we're not protecting those workers that get sick, then we're not protecting the workers that aren't sick either. It creates, like you said, a public health concern. And it's also just not fair to this worker that, again, is going in, day out, working as hard as they can, and then when they hit a wall or their child becomes sick or a family member becomes sick, they're not able to take that time off to care for them, care for themselves. It's not helping anybody out. So just want to make sure we have some regulations in place.
So logistically, how do we make it happen? So if a bill passes, then companies have to adhere to that, the new law? Yeah,
as they do in the other states. I mean, we're going to hear from businesses, small businesses around Rhode Island who are going to put their concerns before us, and we'll listen to those concerns, and we'll make adjustments where adjustments are needed. I mean, I think this should be a collaborative effort. One thing we've learned through the research and through the states where this has been implemented is that most of the businesses who were initially opposed have found this to be a positive in their workplace and a positive for their business because their employees are healthier, more dependable. They feel as though they're appreciated in their workplace. I mean, there's a whole host of reasons that this is better for the business, even though the initial reaction may be, oh no, another regulation, something else to.
And we're sensitive to that, and there are conversations happening with business owners, and there needs to be dialogue and communication because obviously the idea here is not to put another burden on business owners. And we think, just like in all the states that have passed this already and seen really positive results, that there's a great way for us to do that here.
All right. So it sounds like there are definitely some plans, especially rehabbing some of the schools, that are the big ticket items. At the same time, we are looking to go in the other direction of reducing the car tax in Rhode Island over time. How do you take the money away from the municipalities and at the same time make sure that they have other funds earmarked to rehab the schools?
Well, I think that both the governor and the speaker first have been very clear that the money won't be taken away from municipalities, that the state will reimburse whatever has been lost on the municipal side. And I don't think anybody in our chamber would vote for something that was going to starve the municipalities again. I think some of that's a reflection on a brighter economic outlook. Some of that's a reflection on areas in the budget that have improved. And I think, as Aaron said before, some of it's just prioritizing, deciding that this is what we're going to do to try to reduce a regressive tax and give middle class and working class Rhode Islanders an opportunity to have a little extra money in their pocket that they then can go put back into the economy or save for college or.
Was this also something you heard time and time again at the doors?
Yeah, definitely.
Get rid of my car tax?
Definitely. And you see it too, depending on the municipality you live in. Depends on what you pay for a car tax. So it was funny. I actually remember getting an email from a constituent that said that he has the exact same car as his daughter. They bought them together. It's the exact same year. But she lives in Massachusetts and pays $18 per $1,000 on the vehicle. And he lives in East Providence and pays $38 per $1,000 per vehicle. So again, that's one of the things that hinders us when we're trying to be competitive to our neighbors. And we do want to make sure we are being fair. And we do want to bring people to Rhode Island, not drive them out. So it was definitely something I heard, and it was, again, one of those things that we could fix and we could make a little bit better for people.
And what we've been saying in the Fair Shot agenda is that when we're making these decisions, we need to be having an equity lens. So when we're talking about, we're asking folks who can least afford it to sometimes pay the most as far as our tax burden goes. We shouldn't be doing that while we're asking the folks who sometimes can most afford it to not pay their fair share, whether it's tax credits for big corporations that might not need them, whether it's a tax system that seems skewed for the folks at the top.
Now, I remember a couple of years ago, there was the so-called Taylor Swift tax idea that maybe the wealthy should be paying some more. That didn't go anywhere, but could there be some sort of compromise where maybe the wealthy are pitching in more to give some relief to the middle class?
I mean, I think there's a whole host of ways to work on taxes that can create a system that's not overburdensome but fair. I think if you look at Rhode Island, I think, and I said this in the press conference, I don't have the specific solution, but there's room within our property tax system and our income tax system to treat people fairly and still have a good, solid income base, and people on both ends of the spectrum can feel as though they're being treated fairly, and contributing to the overall health of the state.
Yeah, and actually, just to go back to that email that I got, I remember him saying, I get that I have to pay a car tax, but why does it have to be so high? Right. And I think that's what we're looking to do, is find that balance for the working class, for those making a little bit more at the top and those not making so much at the bottom. Let's find that. Let's strike that balance. Let's find what's good for them. But everybody does want to contribute. They just want to see their money going to the right places, to their schools, to letting people have their earned sick time, to things that matter and that help society out as a whole.
And both the speaker and the governor have been pretty clear in saying that they are not proposing these policies in addition to a broad-based tax increase. So we hope that that's possible. No one wants to see vital services cut. And I think that was your question originally, was where are we going to find this money? I think if we can come up with a way within the budget to prioritize and figure out a way to do this without broad-based tax increases, that's great. But we also need to think about the working families who are bearing the brunt of this property tax.
So it is an emotional thing that people just want it to be fair. I mean, even if you're dealing with kids or adults, people want things to be fair. So people aren't completely against paying a car tax, but they just want, if I'm living in this city, I want to pay what you're paying in your city, that kind of thing, because they know that it does go back to benefit them. And I think it's when the services are start taken away from people, like, for instance, when you lose your garbage pickup, that impacts you a lot. Or street lights. Yeah. Or the streets don't get fixed anymore, and you're getting potholes and flat tires. So people don't mind giving back a little bit, but they just need it to be fair.
Exactly. And they want to see their money working for them. And in all those areas that you just mentioned, fixing your streets, fixing up your schools, plowing the roads, keep the lights on, keep the streets safe. I see that being a really big narrative out there. So
where do we go from here with these 4 bills?
Well,
and let me just ask first, were you surprised by the support? I mean, the press conference was great to see all those faces, some new lawmakers that just were elected this year, standing right next to you in support.
I mean, it was exciting. I don't think it was surprising because this came out of these conversations that have been happening among a number of reps who've been having these conversations with our constituents, who've been seeing through this election that there's a real need here. It was great to see. I think it was 26 reps come out and say, we are going to work together to prioritize these issues, to elevate them, to make sure that we're addressing them now. We can't keep kicking the can down the road. It certainly makes me hopeful and excited to keep working with everyone to really push these things through.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, you hear all these little voices in your own districts. You talk to your other fellow representatives, and you start realizing that a lot of us are hearing the same thing. And, as one representative, you can only do so much. When you start working together, that's when we can really be effective, really get our narrative out there, and really start working towards helping these people. So I thought it was great. It was great to see so many people feeling the same way and wanting to do something about it.
And I think there are even more representatives that conceptually approve of these proposals. I mean, they want to see details. They want to know what the budget looks like. But I think these are broad-based, economic-based proposals, which I think if you polled Rhode Islanders, they would all poll very, very well.
Right. But the devil's in the details.
Sure.
I do have a question, too, about your research. It's not like you ever have to recreate the wheel because another town, city, municipality, or state has already done this. Is that how you try to do this, is to pick from the very best what state's having real great success with this and see how they've done it to make sure that it goes smoothly in Rhode Island?
Sure. I think we do that with all of our legislation. I think we can adjust the legislation to make it Rhode Island centric, improve upon it in many cases. I think last year our first attempt at trying to figure out the school funding formula with the charter schools and what we do with the fixed cost, I think that was unique. Now we pulled that from a bunch of different states, but the reality was our proposal and our formula is unique.
Okay. So I'm curious, at the end of session, will we have seen these bills become law? What's your best guess?
We have a lot of representatives.
All hopeful.
Yeah, in support, yeah. And we are very hopeful. Just got to keep working hard, make sure we stay in contact with those people that expressed interest in these issues out in our districts, bring them to the House, and democracy. Let's see how it works.
I think we're going to make forward progress on a number of these. I think that's, yeah. I feel confident in that, and there seems to be enough support both amongst Rhode Islanders and in this building that we should be able to take some forward steps.
And I know last year a lot of the conversation was dominated with some negativeness about roadworks. Will this kind of conversation change the morale in Rhode Island, that the public thinks, hey, my representatives looking out for my best interests, they're working hard for me? Will that change things? Could it change things?
I hope so. I think it should. I mean, these are the issues that came up at the doors. These are the issues we get emails about. And in my experience, when you start working on things that people are asking you to work on, they're happy about it. They seem to be pleased. I mean, that's the whole idea of being a public servant, right? Take those issues and work as hard on them as you can on behalf of your community. Mm-hmm. So,
well, I mean, what we've seen is that what we've seen the right wing do for a number of years, and we saw it in this election cycle, is people are feeling upset, they're feeling left behind, they're feeling economically anxious, and the right wing has been very successful at saying the fault is big government, whatever that means, and how that plays out in elections. What we're saying is it's true. People are feeling anxious. They should be feeling anxious. The deck is stacked. The system is rigged. But our government, our state government, democratically elected by and for the people, can be a vehicle to unrig that system, to make sure that every Rhode Islander has a fair shot. That's, I think, what this is about, and I think that's what, at the national level, needs to be the playbook for Democrats to show that we can make a difference in people's lives. That's what government is for. You have a voice in it, and we're working for you.
In some ways, the message of Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump had a lot of what Aaron just said in it. The vessels for that message are far different, and we don't have to talk about that. But the reality is that both of those candidates touched a chord. And it was clear. I think many of us have been working on things like this since we've been here. They haven't gotten the attention that this has gotten. I'm glad it has. But I think we're trying to be responsive, as Katie said. We hear it at the doors. We hear it in our emails, our phone calls. We try to respond. We can work as hard as we can. If things get better for working families in Rhode Island, then the attitudes will change.
All right, touched a chord. It's a very light way of saying it, and I'm sure that could be another whole program. But Greg Amore, Katie Kazarian, and Representative Aaron Regunberg, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
This was another Legislative Insight. Thank you for joining us, and we'll definitely stay on top of this Fair Shot agenda and keep you updated. Have a great day.